When broken down, Dead by Daylight is quite a simple game. Survivors do gens and open gates, killers attack and hook survivors, and they both interact with pallets and vaults during chases. While nowadays Dead by Daylight's complexity comes from the various perks, killer powers, and map additions, these core mechanics are integral to Dead by Daylight's gameplay loop. With that said, there's one core feature that's been present since the game's release that has become more and more outdated as time goes on. This feature, of course, being the chest. It seems that the devs themselves are aware of the insignificance of chests as they try and artificially convince survivors to open them through the recent wave of survivor perks. In the last 6 chapters that have contained a survivor, half of them have included some perk that requires the survivor to complete chest searches in order to activate them. This is excluding perks that simply affect chest speeds. In fact, Lara Croft includes 2 of these perks. I think the developers are trying to get survivors to interact with chests as they've previously mentioned, wanting survivors to have secondary goals that aren't generators. But why do the devs feel the need to try and incentivize survivors to interact with them? Why aren't survivors using chests on their own fruition? In this video, I'm going to try and discuss why. We'll talk about why current chests feel so lackluster and discuss some potential changes that could be made to make them a bit more appealing in average matches. Hopefully then, we'll understand how chests became one of Dead by Daylight's most outdated features. Let's first start with why chests currently leave a bit to be desired. To me, there's 2 major reasons for chests' current inadequacy. The first being chests are simply not time efficient. What do I mean by this? Simply put, chests are not worth the time you put into them. For example, let's look at the toolbox, an item you receive from a chest. Toolboxes are some of the best items in the game, being able to knock seconds off gens. These seconds make the difference between winning a game or not. Unfortunately, if you get a toolbox from a chest, you've already wasted more time getting it than you could have saved on a gen. Searching a chest takes about 8 seconds and around another 2 seconds to then pick up the item, so even if you loot the best toolbox in the game, which saves you about 10 seconds on a gen, you're not saving any time and you're just about breaking even, and if you factor in the time taken to get to and from the chest, you're actually wasting time. What about the other items? Well, items like maps, keys, fog vials can provide some value and be a bit of help, but generally you're much better off just spending the 10 seconds it took to get the item on a gen. It also doesn't help that some of these items really need add-ons to make them shine, which unless you have ace in the hole, you won't be able to get from chests. Then we have our final 2 items, flashlights and medkits. Flashlight saves, when pulled off, can completely change a game. They are risky because if you don't land it, you waste loads of time just waiting around, but if you can consistently land good flashlight saves, the 10 seconds is well worth it. And then we have medkits, where the amount of time saved when self-healing is worth the 10 seconds as you don't have to waste another survivor's time. This means that only 2 out of the 6 items might actually be worth looting chests for. So chests could be worth the risk if you get these 2 items, but even then the odds aren't really in your favour. If the chest's only problem was its time efficiency, then all the devs would have to do is buff the other items to make the chest more appealing. Make it so toolboxes save more time on gens to compensate for the search time. Make it so the other items have more charges to provide more value. Unfortunately, all of this won't work because the other main reason why chests are so obsolete, that being the survivor loadout. The fact that survivors can bring in any item into a trial completely makes all my previous arguments for the chest moot. Survivor loadouts contain all the pros of chests in Dead by Daylight with almost none of the downsides. Let's quickly compare the main differences between them. Number 1. Loadouts allow you to select exactly which item you want rather than having to hope you, by chance, get the item you do want from a chest. This ensures you get no dud items and are only equipped with the best. This allows you to also make builds centered around items, like flashlight or salvo builds. Number 2. With loadouts you also don't have to worry about the 10 seconds searching a chest and the time spent finding a chest, because you'll instantly spawn in with the item. This means items like toolboxes go from being very situational to being some of the best items in the game. Number 3. With loadouts you can add add-ons to your items. With some of the most broken stuff you can bring a survivor being item add-ons, this makes loadouts much better than chests. While you can technically get add-ons from chests using ace in the hole, this means you have to waste a perk slot and there's no guarantee you'll get the add-on you want. Number 4. Finally, let's look at the main downside of the survivor loadout, that being that your items are finite. You need to buy items in a blood web before being able to bring them into a match. When using chests, there is no financial cost. So as we can see, loadouts have a lot more benefits than chests with only one downside. And if we were to take a closer look at this downside, we'd find out it's not really that bad. In recent years, blood points have become much easier to get. This increase in blood points was intended to make unlocking perks and teachables easier, but has also had the side effect of making players have much more items and offerings. With events like the anniversary giving players hundreds of thousands of blood points, You have players reaching very high levels that they just simply weren't back in the day when the load system was designed. This means that bringing items and offerings into a match isn't really that big of a deal anymore. This all culminates in chests being almost redundant. There are a few edge case scenarios where they can be helpful, like for example, if there are no other survivors able to heal you, getting a medkit from a chest can be a huge help, but generally chests are rarely used in matches. The loaded system has left chests completely outdated. So what can be done to make chests more appealing? Well, when it boils down to it, the main problem with chests is the gap between how strong they are and how strong loadouts are. So to make them more appealing, we need to either buff chests or nerf loadouts. But it is also imperative that we're careful with any changes made to either chests or loadouts, due to them both involving items. Items are some of the most controversial things in Dead by Daylight. When the right items are brought, the game can feel borderline broken. So if chests are buffed, you have to make sure that items are accounted for accordingly. For example, a simple change to make chests more useful would be to drastically reduce the search time. This way you're not wasting too much time getting items, so you may as well do it. This of course would be way too strong of a buff to survivors, as now killers would almost be guaranteed to do with items every single game, with no real downside for survivors. With all that said, here are a few ideas I had to make chests more appealing and to have them be more present in Dead by Daylight matches. The first change that I can think of that I don't think is too unfair would to simply make it so items you find in chests can have add-ons. The randomness of chests would ensure that survivors aren't regularly getting broken add-ons, so I don't think it'd be too much of a buff. Survivors can now also check what their add-ons do on the pause menu, so to be able to understand what their found item does. This change would help close the gap, as now the only way to get add-ons isn't just with loadouts. Another possible change to try and close the gap between loadouts and chests would be to make it so survivors that spawn in with loadout items have their items only at half charges. This would mean that items retrieved from chests would last longer than those brought in. Survivors could still bring in perks like Built to Last to repair their loadouts, but would cost a perk slot. I feel this change could help balance all the benefits you get from loadout items. As a survivor, you would have a choice. Do you want to guarantee a specific item at the start of a match, or do you want to take a gamble and try and get that same item from a chest, but it'll last longer? Chest items having full charges could also make the 10-second search time more worth it, as you will relatively be getting a better item. Now I'm aware this change would be quite a big nerf to survivors, as items are some of the strongest things in their kit, but the only way to make chests more appealing is to nerf survivor loadouts. If behaviour were to add this change, I think they could help compensate with a few buffs. For example, they could make chest search times faster to make chests more time efficient. I mentioned before this wouldn't be a good change by itself, as it would mean killers would have to deal with more items. But now the items on average would be weaker, as loaded items wouldn't be as strong, so I think it might be more fair now. Finally, if you're not a fan of my previous idea, one way to force survivors to interact with chests is to make it so they don't spawn in with their loaded item, but rather they're guaranteed to just get it when opening their first chest. If they don't have an item selected, then they'll get a random one when looting a chest. This change would instantly make chests more present in matches, as it'll be the only way to now get items. This of course would be a massive nerf to Survivor, so Survivor would need some item buffs to go along with it. Personally, I prefer my previous idea with Survivor starting off with half charges, but I thought I'd mention this one in case you guys prefer it. Now I know some of the changes I've suggested might be controversial. My goal was to just make chests a bit more appealing, so I hope I didn't go too far in some places. I'd love to hear what changes you'd make to chests to make them more enticing. Do you think chests needs to be completely reworked, or do you think they're fine as a niche mechanic? Do you think it's not worth nerfing loadouts just to make them viable? What changes would you make? Let me know down in the comments. That concludes my thoughts on the current state of chests in Dead by Daylight. I'd like to thank you for making it this far. I'd massively appreciate it if you could subscribe, as I'm trying to hit 10k subs. That's all for now. Thank you, and goodbye.